In the shadow of every legend, there is often a force unseen, yet powerful, that shapes destiny long before swords are drawn or empires are carved into the earth. For Alexander the Great, the man who would cross continents and challenge the known world, that force was not a general or a god. It was his mother. Her name was Olympias. Before she was Olympias, she was Myrtle, born around 375 BCE into the Molossian royal family, in the rugged region of Epirus, in the northwest of what is now Greece. Her lineage alone was steeped in myth and martial prestige. The Molossians claimed direct descent from the hero Achilles, the swift-footed warrior of the Trojan War, and through him, they laid claim to a divine heritage. In this world of thrones and omens, bloodline was power, and Myrtle had it coursing through her veins. Her early life was marked by aristocratic upbringing, diplomacy, and exposure to both the spiritual and political machinery of her people. But it was her marriage to Philip II of Macedon, the ambitious and calculating king who was transforming Macedonia from a fractured kingdom into a regional superpower, that changed the course of history not only for her, but for the entire ancient world. The marriage, forged as a political alliance between Epirus and Macedonia, was strategic. Yet from the start, it was also volatile. Philip, a man of ambition and appetites, took multiple wives, a common practice among Macedonian kings. But Olympias, as she came to be called, possibly in celebration of Philip's victory at the Olympic Games in 356 BCE, the same year their son Alexander was born, was not content to be just one consort among many. She was fiercely protective of her son, and determined that Alexander would inherit Philip's throne, no matter what rivals or court intrigues arose. But Olympias was not only a queen, she was a priestess, a woman steeped in the arcane traditions of the ancient mystery cults. She devoted herself to the Dionysian and Orphic rites, spiritual paths known for their ecstatic ceremonies, music, dance, and a belief in personal communion with the divine. These cults were not just religion, they were experiences. They promised transformation, rebirth, and divine union. And Olympias immersed herself in them fully. It was in these rituals that some of the most sensational and endearing rumors about her began to take shape. According to ancient accounts, many colored by awe, fear, and perhaps misogyny, Olympias kept live snakes in her bed, allowing them to slither over her body during ceremonies and sleep. These serpents, sacred to Dionysus, symbolized misery and renewal. One story even claimed that Philip himself walked into her chamber one night and found a massive serpent coiled beside her, a sight so disturbing that it helped drive a wedge between the two, emotionally and politically. But the most famous myth Olympias ever touched was the one she crafted for her son. She claimed, or at least allowed others to believe, that Alexander was not the son of Philip at all. Instead, she said, Zeus himself had come to her sunset in a thunderbolt, others in the form of a serpent, and had impregnated her in a dream. This divine conception narrative was not just a story, it was a weapon. By aligning Alexander with Zeus, king of the gods, Olympias gave her son a mantle of semi-divinity that elevated him above every rival claimant to the throne. Alexander wasn't just a prince, he was a demigod. And crucially, he believed it. Olympias raised her son to believe in his divine destiny. She fed him tales of Achilles, of heroes chosen by the gods, and instilled in him an uncheckable sense of greatness. She ensured that he received the best education possible, placing him under the tutelage of Aristotle, the greatest philosopher of the age. She shaped his mind, his sense of self, and his ambitions. She wasn't just his mother's, he was his first and fiercest mentor. But back in the Macedonian court, tensions were rising. Philip's decision to marry Cleopatra Eurydice, a young Macedonian noblewoman, was a direct insult to Olympias. Cleopatra represented a threat. She was of pure Macedonian blood, and any son she bore could challenge Alexander's right to the throne. Olympias was enraged. She left the court and returned to Epirus, her homeland, but even from afar, she remained an ever-watchful presence. The court descended into intrigue and suspicion. In 336 BCE, Philip was assassinated. The circumstances remain murky, but many ancient historians whispered that Olympias may have had a hand in it. Whether she orchestrated it or simply benefited from it, her son became king, and Olympias returned to power. When Alexander embarked on his great campaign to conquer Persia and the world beyond, Olympias stayed behind in Macedonia. But her influence did not wane. She maintained correspondence with her son, counseled him from afar, and worked to secure his legacy at home. Even as he marched from Asia Minor to Egypt, from Mesopotamia to the Indus, she was his strongest ally, ensuring that no one undermined his rule in his absence. But Alexander's death in 323 BCE, at the young age of 32, threw the empire into chaos. The power vacuum left behind triggered the wars of the Diadochi, as his generals, called the successors, vied for control. Olympia saw her chance to continue the dynasty. She threw her support behind her grandson, Alexander IV, the child of Alexander and his wife Roxana. In her ruthless bid to secure the throne for the boy, Olympias unleashed a storm of vengeance. She ordered the execution of Philip III Aridaeus, Alexander's half-brother, and his wife Eurydice. According to some accounts, Eurydice was forced to commit suicide publicly, in a carefully staged act of humiliation and power. Olympias was no longer just a queen mother, she was a political force to be feared. But vengeance breeds enemies. One of Alexander's former generals, Cassander, emerged as a dominant rival. In 316 BCE, Olympias was captured after a series of military and political defeats. Cassander, whose allies she had executed, refused to spare her. According to ancient sources, he ordered her execution, but when the time came, many of the executioners refused to raise a hand against her, awed by her dignity and presence. Eventually, others carried out the sentence. Olympias died defiant, refusing to beg for mercy, even in the face of death. Olympias' reputation was shaped by the men who wrote her history. Ancient chroniclers, almost all male, often painted her as vindictive, manipulative, and dangerously ambitious. They described her religious devotion as fanaticism, her political actions as treachery, and her intelligence as threat. But modern historians are beginning to see her differently. She was a woman in a world that feared powerful women, a queen who refused to be silent, a mother who shaped an empire, and a strategist who moved through the brutal world of Macedonian politics with cunning and resolve. More than just the mother of Alexander the Great, Olympias was one of the most formidable women in the ancient world, a blend of mystic and monarch, nurturer and executioner, legend and reality. She didn't just raise a conqueror, she helped create a god.